Hello and welcome. My name is Deborah Ruthwin Arbinlow, and I'm a blogger and photographer for Second Life. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the Google Nik collection, which is a Photoshop plugin that used to cost quite a bit of money and now is free for download. So for the Google Nik collection, there's a bunch of different filter options that can enhance or create effects for your photos. So we're going to specifically talk about the HDR Efex Pro one, but when you download the Nik collection, you will get all of them. So we're going to go over to Photoshop, and I've got a photo here. In my opinion, this works best on a flat image once you've already finished your edits. I wouldn't really suggest using it on different layers because you are trying to make the layers blend in together. So unless you're trying for a specific effect on a single layer, I suggest doing it over a flat finished image to enhance. Now this I didn't really edit, I just put it together so that you could see. This is obviously unedited, but I wanted to show you how it can affect a background and the foreground, for instance, in like a depth of field photo. So we're going to go to filter. So once you've downloaded Nik software and uploaded the plugin into the Photoshop, and I believe it works for CS4 and above, you can go down to Filter, Nik Collection, and you can see the different options. Now, these two are the only ones I ever really use. The other ones are good too, but I don't really have a need for them. So I'm going to click HDR Efex Pro, and it'll pull up the window here. So we'll just go quickly through all the different things that are here, and then we'll talk about some specific ones. So black and white conversion is obvious. Now here on the side, you see that each of these filters has an option where you can change parts of it. So if I want my brightness to be less or more, if I want to have more contrast, you can do all of those things, or sometimes different types of things, depending on the filter that you're using. So here's a black and white conversion. It's pretty basic, obvious. Bicolor filters, you can choose from predefined filters that can affect your work, and you can choose how much they affect. User, it's the same version except for you choose your own colors. Bleach bypass, which is sort of a saturation and contrast together. So you can see if I saturate this more, reduce my contrast a little, sort of emphasizes your photo. And if you want to prevent part of your photo from getting the effect, and I often want to prevent my background from having too much of the effect, you can choose the control point here. I click this here, the 0% opacity, and you can click it in an area where you do not want to see the effect. And then you can even increase or decrease how much of the effect you see in an area. So say you didn't want your face to get too much of an effect, you take your negative control point and you just click it on your face. And then you can choose how much effect you want. And then let's move on from bleach bypass to brilliance and warmth. It's exactly what it sounds like. You can change your brilliance and your warmth. Classical soft focus just softens your photo up. Color stylizer, all it does is sort of tint your photo. So you can pick a color and it'll change your photo to be tinted to that color. Let's see, colorize. There are different versions of a method. You basically select a color and then it uses a special filter to affect your image in that way. And then we want to go to contrast color range, which is where you pick a color, a type of color, to emphasize contrast in a specific color. So you can see how it can affect your piece. Now, contrast only is just regular contrast, but with more options. So you can see there's more options involved. Saturation, contrast only, soft contrast. A lot of this is just playing around with it. And then we'll go to cross balance. I like to use cross balance or cross processing to overlay my image with a sort of tone. It helps to blend backgrounds on green screens with your foreground, which is usually your avatar, for instance this one. But an easier way to do this might be to use cross-processing. And there's a bunch of filters, and you can choose which ones you like. And it helps to blend photos together. So it makes your image look more natural together. Lots of different options for you to test. And if you don't like how strong it is, you can just reduce the strength or increase the strength as needed. And then shadows and highlights as well can be affected in here. Okay, moving on from cross-processing, we've got dark contrasts, which is sort of like an HDR kind of effect. It helps to bring out lots of the dark details. So if you want something that has a lot of crazy impact, you can use that. Darken and lighten center, it's just, I don't really use this, but you can adjust luminosity in certain areas. It's kind of like a lighter version of having a lens blur, or not a lens blur, a lens vignette rather. Okay, darken, lighten, center, so we did that one. Detail extractor I like to use to extract details on skins. So if you have a skin that looks a little too soft to your eyes, you can use the detail extractor to pull details out of the face. You can see before and after it's pulled some details out in the face. Then we've got duplex. You can take a color and affect your photo. And it's sort of like a soft diffusion with color. I don't use a lot of these personally. Dynamic skin softener, you can soften your skin. You can use the dropper here and select a color from your skin to make it more obvious. So if I select a color, maybe I want to soften this, you can see it softens my image. So I can compare how it softens my face. Film effects are just a bunch of different kinds of effects. They have a huge number of film types, and you can change how much they fade and stuff like that in here. So you can change the fades and how much grain it has. If it has a vignette, all kinds of stuff, how much haze. I don't usually use these because they take a lot of the effect out of your image. It flattens it a little bit, makes it less detailed. There's more here. You can see there's like all different kinds of options. You'll have to go through this yourself, otherwise we would take like 5 billion years to go through them. But you can at least get an idea of what is in here. Film types here for next software. Film grain, it's literally just film grain if you want to have an effect of having like an old grainy picture or video still type of effect. Fog is exactly what it sounds like. It's foggy. But you can have different types of fog. It's really not ideal for a portrait, but maybe for like a landscape type of picture. Foliage, if you have greenery, it helps to enhance it. You can see in the background how it's changing the green. It helps to enhance any kind of greenery that you have. So if you have like a landscape shot. Glamour glow is similar to the glow that we had up in the classic soft focus, but it's a little bit more diffuse, and so you can see, let me move it glow up a little, let me compare it. So see before and then after. It creates just like a soft diffused glow. Glamour glow goes to graduated filters. It's literally just a color filter. Graduated fog is like the fog, but only in part. So that's good for if you want to have fog coming from like underneath or above. And then there's different versions of it as well. Graduated neural density. It affects the tonality of your photo. So you can see here how it affects the tonality. And it's graduated, which means it's like a gradient effect. Graduated user defined. You can pick a color and choose it to do a gradient like that. High key sort of blows out your photo. You can see before and after. You can change how much it blows out your photo. It's kind of like a specialized sort of contrast almost. Image borders is exactly what it sounds like. There's a bunch of different types of image borders if you would like to use them. Indian summer. Let me see if one of these is more potent. That one. Indian summer brings out oranges in your image. It's good for like sunsetty type of photos. So you can see in the background where it was green, it's turned into sort of like fall looking foliage. So it affects only certain colors and it enhances the foliage to be sort of like autumny, stuff like that. Let's see. So infrared film makes it look like infrared film. Ink has different color sets that can create effects on your photos. A lot of these I don't use just because they take away the effect of your photo. Levels and curves is very similar to how it is in your regular, if you just use levels and curves in your regular photo, but you can also change it to affect only certain parts, only certain areas. So it can create unique looking images if you want to take certain types of colors and darken or lighten them. So it's like levels, curves plus in a way. Low key is sort of the opposite of high key. So high key blows everything out. This brings in more contrast. Midnight is a type of effect, so it combines a bunch of different options. It combines a blur and a contrast effect. It creates a cool look, but it is a little unnatural looking in my opinion. But some people are looking for this kind of effect, so it's like an instant effect. Then you got Monday morning, which is like a blowout effect. Old photo, which is supposed to look like an old photo, although in my opinion, not quite. Paper toner has a bunch of different options. Just kind of looks like a printer copy. Pastel, it's just a color overlay effect with diffusion. You can change the type of effect. You can change the diffusion. Kind of like a nice color overlay with softness and diffusion if you want something that's not super distinct. Photo stylizer, there's different options here. So you can stylize your photo using certain types of filters. It's really just what it says it is. It stylizes your photo in various ways. So you can see there's different versions of all these filters. Photo stylizer goes to polarization. I actually don't even know what this one does. It polarizes your colors. Like I said, I don't use a lot of these. Let's see, Polaroid transfer. It looks like a Polaroid transfer. Pro contrast, just a specialized contrast tool so that when you contrast, it doesn't affect your colors as much. Because sometimes when you use contrast, it can bring out like the brassy tones. So it helps to prevent that, where you can correct the color but keep the contrast. You don't want to go that far. Look how beautiful that turned my hair. Okay, so moving from Pro contrast, we have Reflector Efex, which is a sort of like a hue overlay. So you can see it's overlaying with a bit of a gold. It's similar to the cross-processing concept, but it just uses different method. Remove color cast. If you have too many of a certain tone, you can remove it, and you can drag your color to choose what you're removing. So it helps you to change the overall tone of your image without affecting your image otherwise. Skylight filter, you can see here, it just sort of creates like a lighting effect. You can emphasize it or de-emphasize it. So if you want to have some like sunlight sort of tone, you can add that. Tonal contrast uses highlights, midtones, shadows, and saturation to create specialized contrasting. So it's just yet another tool. And then you can choose the method that you want to use for your contrast. So you can play around with which one might work for you. if you use it. Then the vignettes, they're just regular vignettes. So this is a typical vignette filter. You can change the shape, you can change the color of the vignette, you can change the way the edges work, the transitions work, size, all that. Tons of options. Vignette blur, you can change to 3 different versions of a blur. I don't use this because I feel like it makes it look like steamy, kind of like steam on a window. But there are ways to use this if you would like to make this kind of a blur effect. Vignette lens just creates a specialized lens effect. You can do white by moving the amount up, and you can do black by moving the amount down. Circle or rectangle, size, brightness of the photo, all that good stuff. And then finally, white neutralizer, which just neutralizes the specific color that you choose. So if you have too much yellow, you can take it out with white neutralizer. And you can choose how much of the image you adjust, and you can choose how much you neutralize the whites. Now beyond that, you can combine these. So if you take, for instance, I want to take the detail extractor, and then I want to take, let's say, cross-processing. So what I did is I took detail extractor, then I clicked add filter, and then you can choose your next filter. So I extracted detail, and then I want to add cross-processing. So now, before and after. And let's say I want to go back to detail extractor. I just click on it, and maybe I don't like how it has extracted all the detail from here, so I can use my negative control point to reduce the amount of effect of whatever effect I've selected. And then let's say that I think that this has not enough contrast. I could go to contrast only and increase my contrast as much as I want. And then maybe I want to remove the color cast and turn it like less yellow. And then I can reduce or increase the strength. And you can add as many of these as you want, although in my opinion, if you have a computer that doesn't handle graphics very well, it can cause some issues with lagging or even crashing. So be careful with how many things you use. And also, some of these effects are harder on your computer than others. For instance, a dynamic skin softener, when I had a less powerful computer, was very slow. So when I went into it and I selected my color to soften, it took a long time for the color to change. So just realize that there may be limitations on lower end computers for how quickly you can do this, and basically play around with it, see how you like it. You can play with the other filters as well, and maybe I'll do a tutorial on some of them as well, but this one is probably the most impactful for a Second Life photographer, or even any photographer who wants to create images with special effects or emphasize their photo using these kinds of tools. So that's it. I'll click OK, and then it's going to load the fixed up image as a new layer, as long as you are doing it only the first time. So I have the before below it and the after above it. So you can see it's not a huge difference because I didn't use any super crazy effects, but I did use enough effects that it has created a more emphasized image. So you can make your photos give you more impact simply by using this filter tool. And it saves you a lot of time that you might have otherwise spent trying to make all these effects by yourself using layers and all kinds of stuff. So it takes a lot of the time out of editing as long as you are careful with it. You don't want to overdo your effects. Now this is sort of a long, rambling tutorial, so if you are still here at the end, congratulations. Cookies for you. Thank you for watching. If you have questions, comments, concerns, suggestions, except for painting hair, which I don't know how to do, use Rain Morgan hair from DeviantArt. I will catch you next time.